Hey everybody, welcome to another educating and enlightening and entertaining episode of The Quick Draw. I'm your host, Mike. As always, with me is my co-host, John.
I'm the talent, apparently.
And, I don't. So whoever told you I was lying to you?
I don't know.
I think they misspelled token.
That's probably true. That's probably true. We don't use the word token anymore. It's affirmative action now.
Yes, that's exactly what that is. I'm going to hell for so many episodes, but especially for this one, we're off to a great start. So we're going to change things up a little bit. You know, we normally we like to shoot the shit while we own the libs, one productive conversation at a time. Today, we're just going to focus on the productive conversation. There might still be some lib owning today. Although for those of you that can't afford to own libs, you can always live in their head rent-free. And that's what we're going to do tonight. So join us tonight to talk about the Libertarian Party, some Econ stuff. We'll probably make fun of Che Guevara some, because that's a gold mine of material. She is the host of Jen the Libertarian. Jen the Libertarian, welcome to the program.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
So now you did an episode recently on your show about the Libertarian Party.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of got the impression that the Libertarian Party is not really getting you excited, or I don't think it's getting anybody excited. I mean, I think they tried to get people excited.
Some people excited,
but it didn't work.
People very excited.
I don't know. In 2016, it got the chairman excited enough to do a striptease. So
You
can't say we're not fun. You cannot say that we're not fun people.
But I mean, one of the things I've noticed, and I kind of want to get, because I've wanted to have a conversation with libertarians for the longest time, especially about especially Trump's trade policy, and because I think the country would be a million times better off if, instead of the debate being between progressives and conservatives, we went back to the original, like, federalist versus anti-federalist, conservatives versus libertarians. Like, that would be my ideal national discussion. But it doesn't feel like we're having that discussion in between elections, right? Libertarians show up every 4 years. They make some cool points. They make some not so cool points. What's Aleppo? And then they disappear off the face of the map.
To our eternal shame.
Yeah. Well, Gary Johnson will be to your eternal shame.
I was going to say, the party's
Gary Johnson.
But
we still have Bill Weld floating around, by the way.
Oh, well, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
that's true. I suppose you could always have done worse.
But that's fair. That's still my prediction. It's going to be Bill Weld.
So
unless he comes up with something better.
I would love to get your opinion. So I would love to discuss, what is the future of the Libertarian Party? Because it seems like, especially now on Twitter, I'm seeing a lot of, like, libertarian socialists, and that seems like a contradiction of terms.
Very much.
But
so.
it seems like the LP is trying to appeal to those people sometimes. So what's going on with the Libertarian Party? You know, where do you think it has something to offer to political discourse, and what are some things you think that maybe it needs to do better on?
As it stands right now, it's kind of in flux right now. Basically, what's going on is, obviously, you have, for better or for worse, the Stalwart wing of the party that kind of got us Johnson and Weld, and there's pros and cons to that. But then now you have people joining to specifically join the LP Mises caucus, which is basically to take the party back for libertarians. So you kind of,
and that refers to Von Mises, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you kind of have this schism developing, and you have a lot of really, really big names joining the Libertarian Party specifically to join the Mises caucus. Like, you've got guys like Tom Woods, you got Dave Smith, you got David Stapleton, Mark Clares joined, Stephen Kinsella I saw just joined, Mance Rader joined. And so there's going to be, what I see happening leading up to 2020 and going into 2020, because the way we pick our presidential candidates, not like how the DNC and the RNC do it. We don't have, like, primaries and stuff like that. It's basically picked at the convention. There's going to I definitely plan on being there to see this, but I think it's going to be kind of an all-out war, honestly, between the two different wings of the party. As far as the Libertarian Socialists, I think they just exist for us to make fun of them. I'm not quite sure what exactly they are attempting to do. but they're confused.
Well, no.
God help them, they're confused.
I was going to say, John Stuart Mill was kind of in that camp, wasn't he? The philosopher? Or sort of?
A little bit. I mean, but as far as, like, from what I've been able to tell, and I've been kind of trying to look into the libertarian socialist movement, and it's kind of, I can't tell because I don't think they have an established site per se. The only site I've been able to see for libertarian socialists is actually an offshoot of the DSA, which is Democratic Socialists of America.
Right.
So I don't really know what exactly they are trying to do. I mean, it seems like their platform is antithetical to what libertarianism is. So I'm a little confused by them. I don't know what they're doing here. I don't know how they're here. I don't know why they're here.
They're here so we can make fun of them.
Yes, that's my thought.
If there was any better face, I thought the best face I think the Libertarian Party's had recently is probably Austin Peterson. Like I was a fan of him back in 2016, and I thought if the LP had nominated him, I'd have been all for voting Libertarian. Gary Johnson, I'm convinced, was probably on drugs for the entire cycle.
Probably.
But Austin Peterson, I think, is great. He's, he's a young face. He's not Ron Paul nuts, but because Rand Paul's great, but Rand Paul is, well, I guess he's a Republican for all intents and purposes. But and I think Austin Peterson is joining the Republican Party too.
Yeah, he defected. Yeah, he defected into the Republican Party, and I get libertarians wanting to run with the Republican Party just because it's a bigger platform and you can get more exposure and more money and stuff like that.
But you're also forced to change some positions too, or moderate some things.
And I do think they really kind of lost a big opportunity in not making Austin Peterson the 2016 candidate.
Yeah,
he was on the board and he didn't take him, so it's what's going on here?
Does he have?
Well, yeah, because John and I have talked about how if they had nominated Austin Peterson, we would have voted LP.
Oh, easily.
No problem.
Easily. And does he have a place in the modern LP as far as you're concerned?
I do. I think so. I mean, I don't see where he's really specifically changed any of his positions from 2016. But like I said, I get, and it's the same thing with Ron Paul, and the same way with Rand Paul, Justin Amash, Thomas Massey, everybody who is libertarian or libertarian leaning, running with the Republican Party, because like I said, there's just a bigger platform there. You've got ballot access. It's a lot easier to get elected. It's a lot easier to get press. You're not really battling that third party stigma.
Yeah, and because I guess the Federalist Party is kind of still trying to push through all that too. But
have you done? No, that's a good point, John. Jen, have you heard of the new Federalist Party of America? Or have you taught? Are you aware of what they're trying to do?
No, what's going on with them?
So we've actually done interviews with them before. We've done some work with them. They're kind of a soft third party. So they want a restoration of federalism, hardcore traditional federalism, not federalism after the Federalist Party kind of went super central government. Yeah, relative to the revolutionary movement.
Yeah,
they do want they're big on states' rights. They're big on separation of powers. That's kind of their big thing. But they're not, or they haven't yet. I know the goal is at some point to actually kind of form into or consolidate into an actual legitimate third party with potential candidates. Right now, what they're trying to do, they call it kind of a kick the tires type of thing, where if you're a libertarian or you're a conservative Republican, you can help the Federalist Party, you can share their message, but they work within the system. So if you want to take the Federalist Party message and you want to run as a candidate, then they kind of assist with that. But they're not trying to elbow out any of the other parties right now. It's more like they're trying to infiltrate and absorb in a way.
That's interesting.
But I kind of find it interesting because I don't consider myself libertarian. I do have some libertarian tendencies in a lot of things. I think a libertarian has a lot to offer conservatism. It kind of keeps us, I think it helps keep conservatives on the straight and narrow because it's better to err on the side of too little government than too much.
Right.
But I've always said the one thing that keeps me from libertarians, I don't think it actually works. If you look at the example that I always point to of libertarian government, is the Articles of Confederation. I think the Articles of the Confederation are a great example of libertarian government, and it's still better than what they had before. But the weakness of the Articles of Confederation were why we needed the Constitution and a slightly stronger central government. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't hate the Constitution as written. The only thing is, obviously, as written, it has kind of not been enforced in the way that it has been written.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wouldn't mind going back to like a constitutionalist society. I mean, I wouldn't mind going to a monarchy, but I think what has happened over the past 200 some odd years since it's been written and been implemented is that there's people that have gone beyond the scope of it and nobody has stopped them. Mm-hmm. So this is how we kind of ended up where we're at now, is we have this big government that's not really constitutionally mandated, but yet here it is. So I kind of like, I get people that don't, I mean, there are people that are kind of like, you know, fuck the Constitution, but I wouldn't mind rolling it back to that and just having it be that. And
well, I guess we have the amendments and whatnot. I mean, I guess some of them were a little peripheral. I know we have one amendment that repeals a previous amendment because the prohibition and all.
Well, I mean, that had to happen because of how basically the amendments get done. Basically, you can't really repeal an amendment. You have to make an amendment to say this amendment is no longer an amendment.
Right. So that is
yeah, we didn't really like put in the best methodology for like whiting out things, but
yeah.
Well, I don't know. I kind of like that approach. I would almost make the argument that the amendment process, the way it stands, right, where you're not just whiting it out or repealing an amendment, it lets you see the mistakes, right? I would personally, I would love to amend out, if we want to be really technical, right? I would love to amend out the 16th Amendment. I would love to amend out the 17th Amendment. Trying to think of a few other ones. I wouldn't mind tweaking or clarifying the 14th Amendment, specifically equal protection and what that means. I wouldn't mind. Right. I wouldn't mind clarifying birthright citizenship, so that it's not, if you come to this country, and somebody's born, you're automatically given citizenship.
Well, see, that fascinates me because I've seen that idea floated, but I've not seen anybody offer a solution to birthright citizenship. Like, if it's not you're born here, then you're an American, then what is it? Like, what would be the barometers?
I would actually wouldn't mind seeing a inheritance by blood. So if you have one parent or the other is a citizen, naturalized or natural born, right, then it doesn't matter where you're born, you're a citizen. That's how I would do it. Right. There's pros and cons to it. This debate came up a lot during the Obama years because of the whole birther scenario. But the one good thing that came out of that is, at least for me, was I actually had to look into, okay, what's birthright citizenship? Where's it come from? And do these people even have an argument? No, they don't. But it was kind of interesting just to kind of study that. I don't know if I have a solution. I would like to see an amendment for the Constitution that I call the Sunset Amendment. Yeah. And it would basically be term limits on laws, federal laws. So if you pass a law, the Congress has to put into that law a sunset period of no less than 5, no more than 20 years, at which point the law automatically expires. And then the language of the amendment would include things like you can only renew it the year that it's supposed to expire. You can't renew it as part of an omnibus bill or a multiple bill. Like, each renewal period has to be taken on an individual bill basis, right? So there's no renewing 5 laws at once or 20 laws at once or 100 laws at once. Each individual law has to be renewed.
No more omnibus.
Yeah,
right.
And actually,
there's no more omnibus bills, but I don't know if we could ever. I think that would create more problems. I think there'd be some unintended consequences.
Because Mark Levin talked about, if you read his book, The Liberty Amendment, that's what he mentioned, was the idea that you just have it, just amend the Constitution, just remove omnibus laws entirely. And I'm on the fence about that because I actually feel like omnibus creates more problems than it's meant to solve. Because I get what it's meant to solve, but what it ends up becoming is a means to. So what it is they put a name on something and then they put a bunch of unrelated things under it, and then that way when you say, you know, like the Violence Against Women Act was a good example of that, where it had a bunch of stuff in there that pertained nothing to that subject, but then when you say, okay, we're going to just vote against it, then like, oh my God, so you're for violence against women then. You know, I think that's how it's typically used. I mean, so I don't know exactly what all the downsides would be to getting rid of omnibus entirely, but I feel like there'd be more positives than negatives. I'm not really. I
could get on board with that. I haven't put too much thought in that.
Yeah, it's something that definitely gets abused because then, like you said, like you can make a bill and it's got this name on it, like especially like FOSTA SESTA. I just did an episode about that I uploaded today, but basically the idea that okay, you have this bill to stop human trafficking, stop sex trafficking, and I was like, okay, yeah, that's awesome. But then on the backside of that is you have an amendment to Section 230 of the Communications Decency Code, which basically sets up a special situations where like, okay, yeah, you can say whatever you want on the internet, but if you're advertising for a prostitution or anything that we can construe as sex trafficking, all of a sudden that's not a mutant. So it kind of like the omnibus kind of makes like these Trojan horse situations where you can shove all this other shit in there. And like nobody really knows because you put this one name on it and everyone's like, well, I want to put my name to that. But then there's all this other stuff that comes along behind it.
Right.
So
okay, I mean, couldn't you argue? You could argue too, though, that isn't it the job of the executive to say, okay, I am not signing this monumental bullshit bill just because it has a fancy name on it. Like, take it back. I veto this. And if you really want to override my veto, power to you. But send it back and give me a bill that only deals with this issue or only funds this project or only does this or only does that.
You have way more faith in the executive branch than I do.
Yeah.
I'm an eternal optimist. I will give you that.
Yeah, because to me, it's like if the party of the Congress that controls Congress and the president match, then that goes out the window because at that point, then it's just basically, okay, well, if the president's supposed to check this, okay, but if the president is a Democrat and the Congress is controlled by Democrats, he's never going to do it. So the thing is just that, I think you have to mandate something that says you just can't because otherwise.
That's like if I was going to run for president, I would totally campaign on like, look, if the bill is more than 6 pages long and takes me a team of lawyers and more than a day to get through it, I don't care. I don't care if it fucking cures cancer. I'm not signing it. Okay.
Exactly. It's like if I can't expect one of the Congress critters to read like a 1,200-page bill, like I'm not going to expect the president to do it either. Like they're just going to rubber stamp it.
In fact, the length of the bill should also be. There should be an amendment that should include the length of the bill, considering the fact that that's also been used to put things under the radar. Because again, remember what's his name, Jonathan Gruber, the guy who in the wake of Obamacare, they used the length of it to get a lot through because they figured, well, no one's going to read all this stuff. So,
well, we have to read it to know what's in it.
Or we have to pass it. To know what's in it. It's just like, or
we got to pass it, then what's in it?
Read it, but no, apparently not. No.
So they had people they had interns and stuff trying to read through this bill in stages so that they could explain to their congressperson okay, here's what's in the bill. But
here's a summary.
But it's but it's this big, and so you've got 5 people trying to read through it as fast as they can. It was ridiculous.
Right. So now, Jen, you mentioned talking about SEFTA and am I saying it right? SEFTA and FOSTA.
FOSTA SESTA, yeah.
FOSTA SESTA. Yeah. So I've heard that come up recently as far as social media is concerned, and I think there's some ties to Section 230. Mm-hmm. So I know we didn't plan for this, but I'm kind of interested to hear about this a little more because I've made the argument in the past, and it's similar to the argument that Ted Cruz made against Mark Zuckerberg. I've made the argument in the past on Twitter that I'm totally okay with revoking Section 230 protections of social media that decides to editorialize and censor certain opinions, either through algorithms or just outright banning people. So how do those two ideas connect?
I would definitely not advocate on any kind of Section 230, any kind of alterations or anything like that. Where I come down on this is Facebook, Twitter, all social media. it is technically a private platform. Like, they do have their terms of services. They can kick you off for whatever they want to kick you off for. To me, it kind of comes down, but it kind of comes down to it's like the can they and should they. Like, can they to me is a legal issue. Should they is a more ethical issue. So it's kind of like,
no, and I agree with you on that. Like, I'm not saying we should deprive them of First Amendment rights or anything like that. I'm not saying the government should change Section 230 to come in or any aspect of the Telecommunications Act to come in and say, you must, I don't want the conservative version of the fairness doctrine. So let me be very clear with that. When I talk about Section 230 protections, and I've explained it this way. If I'm the New York Times, right? I have the First Amendment, right? I can publish whatever I want, provided I'm not like encouraging sedition or planting bomb threats, right? Because I'm a private entity, and as a private entity, I can publish what I want. I can hire the journalists I want. I can put out the published opinions that I want, right?
So long as it's not libel or defamation or anything like that.
Exactly. As long as it falls under what legally is constitutionally protected. But that's not what Section 230 deals with, right? Section 230 deals with, so I'm the New York Times, and I've got an op-ed section online, right? And there's a comment section that I let anybody, it's a public forum, even though it's privately held and maintained, right? I moderate it. I say who can say what in there because I have my terms of service. It's still a public forum. So anybody that comes in, right? If somebody comes into my public forum and starts making bomb threats, I'm not held criminally liable. I didn't make the bomb threat.
Yeah.
However, if I hire a journalist and he starts making bomb threats and I start publishing those bomb threats in my op-ed section, right? Now I've got problems, right? Legally speaking, because now I'm not protected by the First Amendment in that aspect. I'm not even protected criminally, right? I could be held responsible if I'm publishing things. And so Section 230 is supposed to protect me from when other people abuse their First Amendment rights, not when I abuse them. Where I think it gets a little murky is social media is kind of, we tend to view social media as like the comments section or like Reddit, right?
Pretty much.
When the way they censor individuals, it's almost like we're all freelance journalists in a way, or freelance contributors.
Gotcha.
And they're the editorial board. So at some point, you say, okay, guys, this isn't a public forum anymore. You are now you're a micro blog site. You're taking contributions that you get paid for by advertisers, right? And you're censoring them based on people's political views. And that's fine. You can do that. You are a private entity. You're free to editorialize how you want. But these Hamas and Hezbollah accounts that you've got on Twitter, these child porn accounts, these pornography accounts that don't, filter out 18-year-olds, that, kids can get access to this, you're now criminally responsible for them. That's what enforcing Section 230 would potentially mean, depending on how you interpret the law. And I remember some free speech absolutists who like Section 230 precisely because it gives Twitter and other social media power to censor. They made the case that FOSTA and SESTA were bad because of this issue. Like, if sex trafficking becomes a thing where the government can come in and say, no, we get to control you because you're making sex worker advertisements, then it got murky because now does the government get to tell Twitter how to do things?
Well, as it stands right now, yes, it does, because of that exception under FOSTA SESTA. My argument would be back to you is that Twitter, Facebook they can edit people if they want to. They can shadow ban people. They can kick people off. They're not legally obliged to do it. And that's where I think the whole Section 230 exceptions start coming into play. Because as it stands right now, I mean, if Twitter found, say, a stripper advertising that, hey, I'm going to be at blah, blah, blah place at blah, blah, blah time and come see me, that could possibly be construed as sex trafficking. And so then they can get jammed up for that. So that is pretty much the government saying that, no, you can't really have that on your site. And that's the whole reason why, like, Craigslist took down their personals, Reddit took down the personals.
Right.
Backpage got seized by the FBI. That's a whole nother jam. But
now, see, the thing to me is my understanding of it, as I understand it, and this is me probably having I'm a little lighter on my understanding of this, but as I get it, is that the difference is that, and I think Mike was basically getting at it, which is that is as long as when Facebook and groups like them first came around, they kind of build themselves as a platform. So like with the phones, where you say, okay, a phone company is not responsible for what people say on the phone because it does not curate or edit or do anything. It's just a platform with which communication travel. And then Facebook and then Twitter came later, and the idea was that then they changed, where instead of being a platform, they started curating things, and that puts you in the realm of being a publisher, at which point you are responsible for what people do and say on it. So, and that's my understanding of it. I'm not sure, but like I was just saying, is that about right? Like basically where, because they are curating, I think the idea is because they're saying, well, we're going to shadow ban these people versus those people, then that you're curating content, which means you're a publisher, at which point you are responsible for the things that people do say, that you do let get out there.
I don't think legally we're at that point yet, but that would be an even better argument actually for Facebook and Twitter to not curate, to not be involved in that whatsoever. Just like take a hands off and be like, you know what, you follow who you follow. They post what they post. We don't promote anybody. We don't not promote anybody.
Right.
It just is what it is, and that's it.
And I think that would be better, honestly, but because then you don't have these ambiguous algorithms running around trying to figure out what to, because at that point, and I think the purpose of the algorithms also is to take some responsibility off of the companies, because what they can say is, well, we didn't do it, the algorithm did it. We don't know how. The algorithm is so complex.
But you guys created the algorithm. Come on, that's such a bullshit dog. It's not us. It's like, this isn't fucking Skynet, guys. Okay, AI that you like built. It's like, oh my god, it's out of control. It's censoring the shit out of conservatives. That's nothing to do with it, I swear.
That's basically where Jack's at right now. He's like, I don't know what's going on with the shadow bans. I don't know. I did not do this. It was the algorithm.
Yeah, I can't imagine why the algorithm seems to have all the same views that I do.
I've made this argument before. Like, when somebody gets banned, you always see this on Twitter. Somebody gets banned, and then people will start tagging Jack and Twitter support and some of the other big wigs. Yeah. And I'm like, guys, you're not gonna. Jack is not sitting at his desk going, okay, I've got to look at this appeal personally because 10,000 just added me into it. That's not what's happened.
Hey, I tag Jack too, but I don't think he's listening to me when I do.
Right?
Jack could be the most libertarian guy when it comes to free speech, right? He's headquartered in San Francisco. The people he's hiring are absolute dumb shits when it comes to the First Amendment. Okay, they don't care about free speech. They care about censoring people. And they've been given a lot of carte blanche to just kind of enforce the rules the way they want. So I don't, it's just funny to me that people tag him. It's like, guys, it's not going to change anything, even if he was inclined. And this is a guy that quote tweeted an article that was basically advocating Civil War 2.0.
I think
the article, it was a far left argument basically saying the Civil War should start in California and liberals should go nuts and start like just putting guns to conservatives' heads. And he quote tweets it. He quote tweets it and he's like, this is a great and interesting read. And everyone just like lost their freaking minds. They're like, and rightfully so. It's like, oh my God, this guy is like advocating Civil War. Like, holy shit.
Like, oh my God, it's like he started reading Jesse Kelly. I was gonna say, like,
you can advocate for Civil War, but you can't eat Chick-fil-A.
Really, that's how
that was funny.
You can't eat Chick-fil-A.
The chicken makes you straight. I was gonna say that's how that works.
The conversion therapy chicken.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's probably what's in the spicy chicken, right? I think that's what makes it spicy. I mean, it's the stuff
you eat the 12-piece nugget and a waffle fry, and then you're straight as hell. That's all
I think that's how that works.
No, okay, so I kind of want to go into. I'm going to change the subject a little bit here. So I want to go to tariffs because that's another big thing.
Yeah. We're going to try to be serious now.
Well, no, so we can still make fun. But so tariffs are kind of the big thing. Trump's starting a trade war. I read a lot about the economic impacts of these tariffs are supposed to be having. I don't know if I've seen them personally in my life. That doesn't mean they're not happening. It just I'm skeptical when the news says, yeah, this is happening, and then I don't see it. It's like, but I mean, I understand the argument for free trade, right? That's and I'm a big free trade guy. And I want to be this absolutely clear. I do want to play devil's advocate a little bit, right?
Okay.
Let me make the case for tariffs, as I understand, import export economics, right? And you can tell me where I'm being a dumbass. So the basic economic principle of the basic economic principle of whether a company exports or imports a good, right, has to do with whether its domestic price is relative to the world price, right? If our world price is lower than if our domestic price is lower than the world price, it's been a while since I've done this. I want to say intuitively we export. No,
it would have to be import.
No, we export. If our price is lower than the world price, we export because people want to buy our goods for the cheaper price.
Yeah, everybody wants to buy the cheapest price.
Right. If the domestic price, our domestic price is higher than the world price. I just had to think myself through it. Then we export. We import because we want to buy goods from other countries at the cheaper price, right? And when we do that, there's a change in quantity, right? And this is where you get into like crowding out, and there's actual fallout from that decision until the market hits equilibrium, right? Mm-hmm. The argument that I could make, and Trump doesn't make this argument because Trump doesn't understand economics. No.
True.
He does not. I feel like if we made this argument, one, you get a lot more people on board. A lot of his critics, at least, wouldn't be able to go after him. And also, we'd probably do it a lot more intelligently, as opposed to just picking on people that are beating us in trade, which whatever the fuck that means.
Yeah.
Because I always laugh when people are like, we have a trade deficit. I'm like,
yeah, okay, cool, whatever.
We give little pieces of useless paper, and in exchange, we get goods.
Stuff. Yeah.
We get stuff. I think we're winning this one, guys. Here's some green paper. Here's pork. Can you eat the paper? No. Okay, we're winning.
Like, we give you the papers and you give us the iPhones. Like, come on, who's the loser here?
Like, win. Except I hate iPhones.
But here's what makes the argument for tariffs. We know China, for example, manipulates its currency. We know that Europe or Canada, they are heavily regulated economies, right? Those regulations, that currency manipulation, that alters the world price. So couldn't you make the argument then, okay, then we need to offset that somehow by using tariffs to set it to what we think the world price should be? What are your thoughts on that?
If you're trying to do this through tariffs, you're never going to win, especially if you're talking about China, because people seem to forget that China is still nominally somewhat a communist country. They're still got a communist economy. They can influence their currency. They can manipulate it. They can manipulate pricing. They can subsidize things. I'm sure the EU does it too, although they probably don't really talk about it all that much. But if you're trying to win that war through tariffs, you're going to lose, especially if you're talking about China, because China's just going to keep cutting us down at the knees. Like they're always going to make it cheaper. Like they can't because they can't.
Right. Because they've got slave labor.
Yeah, I mean, because
it can't be slave labor.
Yeah, it's a communist country. It's a communist economy. Like, you're not going to beat that. There's no way around that. So
yeah, it'll just drive wages down. Because somebody was making an argument on my friend's feed over on Facebook where he was explaining that, as he saw it, the purpose of tariffs was that if you've got those people who pay their workers a lot less, then basically tariffs are for us to basically force their standards up. So, but I guess I don't, I don't like I said, I kind of look at it, and like I said, I wanted to have this discussion on say I'll take a shot if anyone mentions Smoot Hawley, but but that's just it. Is I keep thinking to myself, like you said, there are too many factors in the world to control that tariffs really aren't going to control anything. So I don't see why they.
And I understand that. Like I keep thinking back to, like, didn't Jefferson brag in his farewell address about how he basically ran government with nothing but tariffs and excise taxes.
Before we had
Like,
the income tax, yes.
I was gonna say, like, I would love to go back to that, where it's just like, okay, tariffs and excise taxes are the only thing I ever have to pay. Cool.
And I've actually heard people make that argument to get rid of the income tax and just go back to like flat tariffs on things. Which, I mean, I'm no fan of the income tax. Personally, I would like a VAT. I'm not a big fan of tariffs, obviously. But just to kind of go back to the whole argument of why we definitely can't win a war with tariffs, especially with China. Let's just pick on the whole soybean argument for a second, because obviously China tariffed our soybeans and they are the biggest importer of our soybeans. They've got other places they can get soybeans from. Like, it's not that big a deal to them. And even if it was, they could just be like, okay, everybody, soybeans cost more, go pound sand. So, I mean, they're not really beholden to their people the way you would be under a capitalist society.
Right.
So
you're
not really like, you're not going to win that.
You could argue too, like, it's the same concept as the Laffer curve, right? There's so much you can tax someone before your gains on taxation are actually decrease, or they become inverse to the amount that you raise tax, right?
Right.
You could say the same thing about tariffs. It's like, okay, there's a tipping point where we can raise tariffs, but if we cross that, then the gains on tariffs they kind of invert, and then the more we raise tariffs, the less we get because countries stop selling to us. But again, it goes to that domestic price versus world price. If we raise our tariffs too much to where we shift the world price relative to other countries, right? Yeah. Then they cease to be an exporter and start to become an importer. So it's kind of and I'd almost, the other thing I wanted to ask you too is, we talk about spreading liberty or helping people. If we want to talk about influencing other economies so that they become less regulated, so that they become freer market economies, which is good all around, couldn't a tariff that penalizes nations based on how regulated they are, wouldn't that be a benefit? Like, as if for example, if Canada is doing trade with us, we say, look, Canada, we love to do business with you, but you have these laws on raw milk that are just really stupid. And I'm assuming we're like I'm assuming we're like a minarchy here, and we don't have our own stupid laws about raw milk.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, let's say we're like a near libertarian country, right? And we say, okay, Canada, we don't like your laws on these products. Tell you what, until you get rid of them, we're going to charge you a percentage of what you want to sell. We're going to charge you a tariff until you deregulate, and that would offset the trade war aspect, right? Because now countries can get out of a tariff not by coming at us and raising our tariffs. We'll say, okay, we'll just get rid of the regulation, no big deal. And people might see that as heavy-handed, but I kind of like that idea as far as spreading free market ideas and spreading liberty to other countries, especially developed countries.
First problem: why would it be incumbent upon us to tell Canada how they should be treating their milk? Second of all, when you look at it that way, you're kind of looking at tariffs the same way we look at sanctions on countries. And sanctions have traditionally not worked all that well. So if you're trying to make it a thing where, like, okay, we're going to tax you this much until you do a thing that we want you to do. I mean, countries typically have been basically like, go fuck yourself.
Right.
Honestly, it's like, it would be like turning a tariff into a sanction, basically.
Right. Okay, no, I hadn't thought about that. That's actually a really good argument. So that argument shot down. I'll admit it, I'm wrong.
Thought I had something there.
Damn it.
I thought I was onto something. Hey. I really thought I was onto something, and then you compared to the sanctions, and I'm like, shit.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you've read Nudge, the book, that economic book. I don't know if you've read it. Yes, understand.
But I'll definitely put it on my list now.
Oh God, please don't. Unless.
Oh, never mind. Yeah, this is not a recommendation. This is a warning.
Well, it's the idea of libertarian paternalism, that basically you can influence people's behavior by incentivizing or de-incentivizing certain behaviors by, say, taxing or regulating or stuff like that. Kind of like the way, I know up in New York, I don't know if they still do it, but they have, Yeah, they have like the soda tax and like you
Yes.
can't buy certain sizes of
But
stuff.
that's not
Starbucks and stuff
they
like
call
that.
them that libertarian paternalism because that sounds a lot like progressivism.
Yeah, well, it's that's
for the
why I
libertarian
have a lot of problems with the book. Like, first of all,
the
don't put,
libertarian part, it's just paternalism, period.
yeah, like
which is
don't
pretty much
put
what the left-
libertarian anywhere close to that, please, and thank you for stuff. But yeah, like that whole idea that like, and even you can even see it with things like taxes on cigarettes and alcohol
Right.
and stuff like that, where you're like,
taxes, I think.
yeah, you're like trying to disincentivize people from doing things through taxes, but obviously we're all still, well, or we're not, I don't think we're all still smoking, but we're all still drinking. We're all still drinking.
Right, exactly.
Well, not this guy. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, no, he's not. He's not. Sorry. He drinks vicariously through me,
Yeah.
which is really not much because I'm a lightweight anyway. But and that makes sense really, because I was going to say the whole idea of trying to incentivize what people do. Actually, truth be told, that was actually a very, very common facet of fascism. They used to do that quite a bit. They actually had in Germany. I mean, to the point that, and I don't know, what is this weird thing with groups like that where they call everything the people's this, the people's that. They actually had a people's drink, the Volksgetränk. You know, it was like, I was just like, are you serious? What do the people not have the government recognized? I mean, like, again, the Volkswagen was the people's car, which was the prominent one of Hitler's. I'm just like, what is their deal with doing that? But yeah, they did that. And they're like, we decided that sweet cider is the people's drink. I was like, how the hell did you draw that conclusion? I was like,
every time you gotta call it whenever you have like a communist country, it's like the People's Republic of
right, and it's the least.
No, it has nothing to do with the people. You're not asking the people anything.
It seems like millennials now they're really the big trend is democratic socialism. It's democratic. It's got to be good. Look, guys, if we're all drinking from the same arsenic-laden punch bowl, it's still an arsenic-laden punch bowl.
Yes.
We all vote on it. It's cool.
Well, plus, I think, who was it recently I was listening to that was explaining the difference between democratic socialism and social democracy? I think it was Sargon of Akkad, but he was like, I was just like, okay, a social democrat. Apparently, that was the quibble that the prime minister or whatever of Denmark had with Bernie Sanders, because Sanders is saying they're a socialist country, and they're like, no, we're not. And it's like, we're a social democracy.
It's just like, kill me now.
Right, because I'm like, it's like a very minor difference. Like, you know, it's like you're basically saying that, okay, we're not socialists in the sense that the government doesn't just outright steal your stuff. It just says, hey, you can own it, but you can't do anything with it unless you have my permission.
Yeah.
And that's totally free. It's free market. You just can't do anything. That's all. I was like, you know.
It's fine. It's totally fine.
John, you bring up a good point. I kind of want to talk about this because, you know, on our side, we'll point to countries like Venezuela, Cuba, Soviet Russia as examples of socialism. And go, man, it's not real socialism, guys.
What the hell it ain't.
Yeah.
But they'll do the same thing to us. You know, if you talk about libertarian government or conservative government or free limited government, they'll always point to like Somalia. So, Jen, what do you say to those?
It's not pirates, okay? We're not pirates.
Well, I will
big leg libertarian jar.
I don't know much about the government of Somalia, to be honest, but let's just be realistic. Let's just figure what it's not, okay? What isn't it, do you think? Do you think that it's not a limited government under a constitution, under the rule of law, that minimally involves, that basically just creates a framework of laws for, do you think that's what Somalia does? Because I'm pretty sure it's not what it does. That's what we're arguing for, because they act like if you're not completely controlling the economy, you're for anarchy. Everything is chaos. No. And again, this was the old progressive argument. If you look back on progressives back from the 19-teens, 1920s, that was basically their argument. You have to be in control because laissez-faire means you just let everybody do whatever they want. That's
no!
That was like, no, people kind of make things orderly. No, because order only comes when we bring it. And I think that's really the crux argument there. So I think they're probably looking at Somalia. I don't know what Somalia does. My guess is Somalia is probably somewhere trying to do something anarchistic.
Well, they have an actual government now, and everybody screams moved to Somalia, that kind of like the old days when they actually didn't really have a government.
Yeah, they haven't had a stable government in the last, 30, 40 years, something like that.
I think they're starting to get their shit together, though. I do think.
I guess. I was going to say, I just know that Somalia it's amazing, actually, because it's like all the tribal warfare. Somehow they managed to war. There's like one tribe there, and they still managed to do it anyway.
Yeah.
But that's just it, is that I think it's based on, the reason leftists do that, I think, is because it's based on the idea that to them, anything that is not centrally controlled is just utter chaos. And so, therefore, if you're for some people being free, they see freedom as chaos. I think that's basically what it is.
Well, it is chaos, but chaos is a good thing.
Yeah, like we can order ourselves. I mean, it's like, if you have a line of people, like everybody can figure out how to get in a line. Like everybody can kind of figure out how to arrange their lives. And
it's like when you take traffic lights away from smaller intersections, people don't hit each other. They kind of figure it out. Hey, we'll stop for you. Okay, people aren't stupid. I think that's a base assumption, I think, of leftists. People are stupid. Basically, you have to. That's why they say, well, you can't drink this sugary drink, because I think people can figure that out. Maybe they just don't care. Did it ever occur to you? Leave them alone. Okay.
we have to pay for it. We have to paying for it. Not if you got the government on healthcare. Yeah, you only have to pay your healthcare bills.
Right, and that's like
we've said this. John and I have said this for years. And it's come almost like a mantra of mine. It's like the fundamental premise of progressivism is that there are two classes and two classes only: those fit to rule and those fit to be ruled. That is progressivism in a nutshell. And whether it's telling you how to live your life and what you can drink and what you can eat, or telling you how much healthcare you need, it's because you are fit to be ruled, not to rule yourself or anyone else. So I do want to use the last. We got about 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes here, John. We're going to make you libertarian queen for a day. Right? We're gonna make you. We're gonna give you the authoritarian power that you don't want, just so you can strip the government.
We want to take over the world and leave everybody alone.
Exactly. So you're the libertarian queen for a day. What does American government? What are we stripping out? What are we getting rid of?
All of it.
All of it. All of it will be Somalia, and we'll all die. Do you want people to die? Do you know how many people died when net neutrality was repealed? Do you know how many people died when we got out of the Paris Accord? Why do you hate people, Jen?
And the tax cuts. Can't forget the tax cuts. Killed everyone.
Oh, the tax cuts. We all died of the tax cuts. I forgot.
We're all dead. We're all dead.
We're all dead. We can't get any deader, Jen, so you might as well go for broke. Let's do this.
Don't you all want to be pirates?
Exactly. I was actually watching stuff on MythBusters about that, about pirates.
But seriously, let's seriously.
Okay, anyway.
What are we getting
serious face?
You're libertarian queen for the day. What are you getting rid of in the next 24 hours? What's gone? It's gone. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. No debate. It's gone.
I've got 24 hours.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, yeah, you're just queen for a day. After that, the government we have is the government we're stuck with. Okay.
Okay. All right. We're going to start with the IRS.
Yes.
And then we're going to get rid of the Fed.
I like it. I'm on board. I'm listening.
Probably going to get rid of the Treasury because we're just going to institute cryptocurrency. And then after that,
I can't get on board with that.
Yes, you can.
No.
It will be our new currency.
But keep going.
It's our new currency. So let's see. After that, let's see. Once I've pretty much dismantled all of that.
What about the FBI, CIA, military?
Definitely NSA. NSA's gone.
Okay.
NSA's gone. ICE is gone. Probably go ahead and get rid of the FBI and CIA too, because I mean, honestly, what purpose are they really serving now?
So now, would you say ICE is gone? Would you do open borders, or would you do some different kind of enforcement?
Ooh, now you just touched the third rail of libertarian politics.
I touched this third rail, and I've gotten shocked more than once by both libertarians and conservatives, because I'm kind of in between there. But I definitely am more of an open borders kind of person. Okay.
But I would say if we wanted to have some kind of border enforcement, I would kick it to each individual state. Like Texas can do what they want, Arizona, New Mexico, I think people come through there.
What about the free rider problem? Because the border states would be picking up the tab, and then on all the other states would be like, well, let the border states deal with it.
I mean, it's like I said, it's if you're going to kick it all the way back to the idea of states' rights and basically all the way back to private property, and if you're going to make the argument, let me make that clear for all the libertarians who don't make this argument. If you're going to make the argument that states exist and that they have property, then it's incumbent upon them to protect it however they want. And that's not to say, like, if, say, Texas decided they're going to have a completely porous border and people come through Texas and then they want to go to, say, Oklahoma. That's not to say Oklahoma can't have a closed border, or Nebraska, or any other state that wants to either let in or not let in whoever they want.
Oh, okay, all right.
Okay, that's interesting. All right, what about the Department of Education?
Oh yeah, please.
Go ahead and get rid of that, because I mean,
thank you. That's
honestly, it didn't exist until what, 1970, 71. We lived long enough without it. I don't think it really needs to exist.
But my roads and my bridges, Jen. My roads and my bridges. My roads.
Already got that under control.
Well, you know, I was gonna say Domino's Pizza apparently is now like paving potholes. So I was like, I love the fact that when Democrats hear that, you remember the tweet I think somebody put up there? It's like, oh my God, Domino's is paving roads, and Tesla is wanting to fix Flint's water. So ominous. And it's like, how is that what?
Like, okay, cool.
I was like,
privatization works.
But we're your saviors. What
about Department of Labor, HHS?
HHS, I don't really care so much about them. Department of Labor.
Did they do anything?
Do they really do anything? I mean, that's really more handled on a state by state level, aside from minimum wage.
But HUD.
What about every relic of the New Deal?
Well, yeah.
Are we talking about like Social Security and Medicare?
Everything that FDR implemented under the New Deal.
Dude, I am honestly all for, at this point, Social Security. I am willing to forego everything I've put into it to never have to put into it again.
Right, I agree. I'm with that.
Okay, it's already gone.
I'm young enough, I guess, that I can say that.
Okay.
I mean, it's gone. I'm never going to see it again. So
yeah, exactly.
I'm not really losing anything.
Right. You can
have it. Just don't take it from me anymore.
Exactly. And I think
that's a good compromise.
Medicare and Medicaid should certainly be phased out. There's actually a good article. It's from back in 2007. I think it was updated in 2014, but it's really good. It's on the Objective Standards website. It's called Universal. It's Moral Healthcare versus Universal Healthcare. Universal in quotes.
What the hell is moral healthcare?
It's a really long article, but it's a good one. It basically goes into explaining why is the healthcare system the way it is? Why is it so bloated? How did it get this way? How did we get to the point where we don't even remember what insurance is for? You know, and then give some suggestions as to how we can kind of put it back to a free market setup where it doesn't where it's not interfered with by the government, which I think is the largest problem that anything has really, but especially the insurance market is the interference.
Okay, last one. Military spending, because I know libertarians, they also kind of get some flack for this one. So, you're queen for a day. What are we doing with military spending? How are we changing that? Or are we changing it?
We are changing it. Everybody's getting out of the Middle East. Everybody's coming home. Everybody, Afghanistan, Iraq, everybody come back. North Korea, demilitarized zone, everybody comes back.
Okay.
So that would pretty much cut down on well, I mean, I would start closing some other bases and stuff too that aren't really necessary at this point anymore at this
What about NATO?
Stage in history.
Because Trump is dealing with that. NATO can probably go too. The United Nations can go. Oh, well,
Hey,
There you
I
go.
got on board with that.
There you
Yes,
go.
tell them
They're taking up prime real estate in Manhattan, and they can go, and then Trump can develop it. I don't know. I'll give it to him.
The one
That'll be my sock to him to get him out of the White House. Like, you can go develop where the United Nations is.
I think too, Jen, we just gave you like a bunch of really good ideas for stuff you can discuss in depth on your show. So where can people find you so they can listen to you discuss those really cool in-depth ideas?
The name of the show is Jen the Libertarian. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher, and maybe one day on Spotify if they ever get it together and put me on Spotify. I don't really know what's going on with that, but yes, that's where you can find me. And YouTube, but I'm kind of working on my YouTube channel, so I'll probably tweet that out. You can find me on Twitter, obviously. Handle is at Jennifer M lower dash Q, and that's what you can find me. Yeah.
All right.
Whatever. Use the proper words then.
Yeah, and we follow each other now, so you can.
Yes.
You will definitely see us retweeting and responding to Jen. This has been a really fun discussion. So I definitely want to have you back on again. We can have some more libertarian versus conservative discussion, which is where the discussion needs to be in America.
Productive. Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, this is absolutely the conversation. Man, I mean, it was entertaining, but.
Which is all we can expect from political discourse at this point anymore. It was entertaining.
Right. Well, yeah.
Never boring.
Look who we elected president. I think obviously that's what we were going for.
Yeah, it's 100 years of warring and whoring, but never boring. Make sure you're following Jennifer at Jennifer M _ Q. Make sure you're following us at @ornery_opinions. Follow John here. He's at Firelight Phoenix. Right?
Yeah, you remember
right? Firelight Phoenix. Phoenix is FENIX because Twitter has a character limit. I did not know that.
Yes, and
I didn't know that either.
I still think not gay John would be easy to remember, but he doesn't want to go with that one. So
no, because apparently I changed it and you still can't remember.
But I can at least pronounce it. Yeah, and when I say it, people are like, oh, I can remember that. Cool. So yeah, at Firelight Phoenix. At @ornery_opinions and at Jennifer M _Q. We will be here next week at our usual time. We were a little bit early because we didn't want to keep Jen up too late.
Hey, I'm getting old, all right?
All right. Well, you don't look at anything.
I'm not saying anything.
I'm sucking up. But we will be back to our usual time, so make sure you're checking us out at 10 o'clock Eastern. We're going back to our regular times. So don't want you guys to show up and be like, what happened to the show? And in the meantime, we'll be building those roads and bridges because the government's gone because Jen, the Libertarian Queen, got rid of all the roads and bridges. So now we have to get our child slave labor to build them for us. So we'll be busy this week. You guys make sure to tune in next week. Thanks for participating, and Jen, thanks for coming on the show. We'll see you soon.
Thank you for having me.
All right. You guys have a great week.